I thought I'd be living the slacker dream with a $10 million buyout, raising chickens and living off the grid. But when a fleet of cars that could buy my entire hometown blockaded my driveway, I knew I was wrong. My ex-wife, a CEO in a couture suit, was practically shoved into my rustic farmhouse by her family. They said she was sick, that the pressure had finally cracked her. And me? I was supposedly the only cure. Staring at that stunning, ice queen face, I had to wonder, was this a second chance or a disaster waiting to happen? Chapter 1. My name is Liam Miller. I'm 28, freshly divorced, and professionally unemployed. 3 years ago, to cover my mom's life-saving heart surgery, I signed a 3-year marriage contract with Isabella Vance, who was then the heiress to the Vance Corporation. I was her shield against a family-arranged marriage. She gave me the money to save my mother's life. For 3 years, we were as close as two icebergs, sharing a house, but little else. Outside of necessary public appearances, I don't think we exchanged 100 words. Yesterday, the contract expired. We had an amicable divorce. Isabella was generous, wiring $10 million straight to my account as a hardship bonus for the last 3 years. With that small fortune, I left the suffocating pressure of New York City without a second glance and returned to my scenic Oregon hometown. I bought a huge plot of land on the outskirts of town and built a small farm. I named it the Whatever Farm. I imagined a future of raising chickens, feeding fish, tending my garden, and walking my dog. A simple life, completely checked out from the rat race. I was, it turns out, incredibly naive. Today is my 3rd day at the farm. I was in my element, cut-off shorts, flip-flops, humming off-key while watering my vegetable patch. That's when a deafening roar of high-performance engines ripped through the morning quiet. I looked up and froze. 5 black Rolls-Royce Phantoms, like a pack of steel beasts, had aggressively parked at the end of my muddy dirt road, crushing a section of my newly installed fence. Holy crap, I thought. Did some billionaire LARPing group decide to tour the countryside? As I was trying to process it, the door of the lead car opened. A long, slender leg emerged, followed by a custom-made crystal heel, and then that face. A face so breathtakingly beautiful it felt out of place, even in the wild beauty of the landscape. Isabella Vance, my ex-wife. She wore a perfectly tailored white pantsuit, her hair in an immaculate bun, her expression as cold and distant as ever. She just stood there, a stark contrast to the earthy, fragrant atmosphere of my farm. I looked at her, then down at the watering can still dripping in my hand, and my blood pressure shot up. Lady, we just got divorced yesterday. We're square. What are you doing, chasing me all the way out here? Did you decide you overpaid and want a refund? Then, the other cars disgorged a small army of men in black suits and a silver-haired but fiercely energetic old man. The old man was Isabella's grandfather, the patriarch of the Vance Corporation, Theodore Vance. My stomach dropped. This didn't look like a collection agency. This looked like a hostile takeover. Theodore strode toward me, his sharp, calculating eyes scanning me from head to toe. His gaze landed on my mud-splattered flip-flops, and his brow furrowed so deeply you could lose a penny in it. Liam, he said, his voice booming. Mr. Vance, I replied, setting down the watering can. I kept my voice even, neither subservient nor defiant. Humph, Theodore grunted. He turned and gestured toward the silent Isabella. In a tone that left no room for argument, he declared, from today on, Isabella is your responsibility. I'm sorry. I was pretty sure I'd misheard him. My responsibility? What did that mean? Was there a warranty? Because that definitely wasn't in the contract. Theodore sighed, a look of profound distress on his face. The girl's been under too much pressure. At a board meeting last week, she suddenly announced she was giving it all up to come here and farm with you. We were terrified. He leaned in, lowering his voice. We took her to a doctor. The doctor said, she's had a sort of breakdown. She needs a change of scenery, a quiet place to recover. No more stress. I stared dumbfounded at Isabella. A breakdown? The woman who was always calm, always rational, who scheduled her life down to the millisecond. The Queen of Wall Street had lost her mind? Isabella must have felt my gaze because her icy eyes met mine. There was a flicker of something in them. A warning? Theodore didn't notice. He kept talking. The doctor said the cure might lie with the cause. Her subconscious is fixated on this place, on you. That means you're her medicine. So, We decided she'll stay here with you until she's well. Don't worry about expenses. We'll deposit $100,000 into your account every month for her living costs and your trouble. You don't have to do anything. Just let her be here. Go along with her, and whatever you do, don't upset her." Before I could protest, he shoved his suitcase into my hands, gave Isabella a look that said, "Behave yourself and get well," and turned to leave. The security detail followed him, piling back into the cars. Just as they arrived, the 5 Rolls-Royces tore off in a cloud of dust, leaving me and Isabella standing in front of my vegetable patch with a ridiculously expensive-looking suitcase. The air was filled with a bizarre cocktail of fresh soil, chicken manure, and designer perfume. I looked at this woman who seemed to have stepped out of a fashion magazine, then at my farm, where the Wi-Fi was spotty at best. $100,000 a month to play a real-life version of Stardew Valley with my supposedly insane ex-wife? The money sounded good, but my gut told me this was the most dangerous job I'd ever taken. Chapter 2, I was jolted awake by a piercing cock-a-doodle-doo. It was my prize rooster. I call him General Tso. Rubbing the sleep from my eyes, I stumbled out of my room and was met with a sight I will never forget. Isabella, dressed in a silk pajama set that probably cost more than my truck, was standing in the yard, her fluffy slippers a stark white against the dirt. She was locked in a silent, icy standoff with General Tso, who was perched proudly on the fence. The general let out another triumphant crow, as if declaring his dominion. Isabella's brow was furrowed, the murderous intent in her eyes so palpable it was practically a physical force. One was trying to conquer the world with its voice, the other with a death stare. I leaned against the doorframe, thoroughly enjoying the human versus chicken showdown. "Shut up," Isabella finally hissed through clenched teeth. The general, apparently taking this as a challenge, puffed out his chest and crowed even louder, flapping his wings for emphasis. Isabella's expression grew colder. I saw her bend down, her eyes scanning the ground for something. A sense of alarm shot through me, and I bolted outside. "Your Highness, have mercy. That's my future beer can chicken." Isabella turned, her hand clutching a clump of dirt. I stared. She, too, seemed to realize this particular weapon was beneath her station. She slowly uncurled her fingers, dusting off her clean hands, and shot me a chilling glare. "Control your bird." With that, she spun around and retreated into the house, leaving me with her regal, indignant back. I looked at General Tso, still strutting victoriously on the fence, and fell into a deep thought. This woman was definitely not all there. Who gets into a beef with a chicken? Later that morning, a middle-aged man in a nondescript sedan pulled up. He wore gold-rimmed glasses and had a mild-mannered air about him. He introduced himself as Dr. Evans, the psychologist the Vance family had hired. He would be visiting once a week for sessions to monitor Isabella's condition. The first thing Dr. Evans did was pull me aside. "Mr. Miller," he asked conspiratorially, "how is Ms. Vance today? Any unusual behavior?" I thought about the morning's chicken-related incident. "Yeah," I said honestly. "She tried to assault my rooster with a dirt clod." Dr. Evans pushed his glasses up his nose, a glint in his eye, and scribbled furiously in his notebook. "A return to the primitive. This is a classic regression to a more primal state," he exclaimed. "Ms. Vance has spent years in a high-pressure environment, surrounded by cold data and sterile offices. She is now attempting to connect with nature in the most fundamental, earthy way possible. This is a breakthrough, a very positive sign." My jaw dropped. I felt my understanding of the world shift. So this is how you get paid to talk nonsense. Dr. Evans gave me an encouraging pat on the shoulder. "Mr. Miller, your very presence here is therapeutic. I recommend you gently guide Ms. Vance into participating in daily farm activities, like feeding the chickens or gardening. It will help her construct a new, healthier cognitive framework." Looking into his sincere eyes, I nodded. "Right, I'll do my best." After Dr. Evans left, I went back inside to find Isabella had changed into a designer sweatsuit. While still ridiculously high-end, it was a step down from couture and silk pajamas. She was sitting on my simple wooden couch, engrossed in a book titled Swine Management for the Modern Farmer. I blinked. She was so absorbed, she didn't even notice me approach. He peeked over her shoulder. The page she was on was titled, Chapter 5, Maximizing Sow Lactation. Oh, this is bad, I thought. She's so far gone, she's researching interspecies nursing. I clear my throat. Isabella looked up. Seeing it was me, she closed the book. Yes, she asked coolly. Dr. Evans thinks you should participate more in farm activities, I said, mimicking his professional tone. For the sake of your recovery, I've decided your task for this afternoon is feeding the pigs. I expected her to refuse, or at least show some disgust. Instead, she was silent for a moment, then nodded. Fine, where's the pig pen? I was stunned. That's not how the script was supposed to go. Aren't Ice Queen CEOs supposed to be obsessive germaphobes who faint at the slightest unpleasant smell? Baffled, I led her to the pig pen in the back. My two prize hogs, Porky and Petunia, were grunting happily and rolling in the mud. A rich, earthy aroma filled the air. I instinctively glanced at Isabella, ready to witness her elegant composure shatter. But she only wrinkled her nose slightly. Then she walked straight to the feed trough, picked up the scoop I'd left there, and filled it with a motion that was surprisingly practiced. I was completely floored. Expressionless, she dumped the feed into the trough. The two pigs immediately trotted over, snorting and gobbling it down. She just stood there, watching them quietly. The golden light of the setting sun bathed her in a warm glow, tracing the outline of her expensive sweatsuit. A breathtaking woman, a shabby pig pen, and two pigs eating their hearts out. The scene was pure, surrealist art. I couldn't resist. I pulled out my phone and sneakily snapped a picture. The caption would be, My Crazy Ex-Wife and Her New Best Friends. Chapter 3. Over the next few days, Isabella seemed to genuinely embrace her role as a patient on a wellness retreat. She went to bed early and woke up early. She either spent her time reading my eclectic collection of farming manuals or followed me out to the fields. Of course, her idea of helping was to set up a small stool on the edge of the field and watch me work with a blank expression. I tilled, she watched. I planted seeds, she watched. I pruned the fruit trees, she still watched. Her focus was so intense, it was like she was auditing a $100 billion merger. It was stressing me out. I felt like if my rows weren't perfectly straight, she'd fire me on the spot. Old man Hemlock from the next farm over was leading his cow past and saw us. He stopped and gave me a conspiratorial wink. Well now, Liam, you're doing all right for yourself. City girls are something else, ain't they? Never seen someone so fascinated by a man pulling weeds. I managed a tight smile, unable to explain. Isabella, however, was perfectly calm. She even gave Mr. Hemlock a slight nod in acknowledgement. After he left, I wiped the sweat from my brow. Look, Ms. Vance, could you please not stare at me like that? It's giving me the creeps. She looked up. Dr. Evans said observation is the first step to learning. Learning what? I thought. You're a CEO who manages thousands of people. You gonna start tilling the boardroom floor? Even though she was cooperating with her treatment, something felt off. She was too calm, too composed to be a patient. The answer came late one night. I got up to use the bathroom and saw a faint light coming from under her door. My curiosity piqued. I tiptoed over and peeked through the crack. Isabella was sitting cross-legged on her bed, a blanket pulled up to her chin. A glow emanated from beneath the covers. Her head was bowed, her fingers flying across some hidden device as she muttered to herself. This quarter's financial report is a mess. Have the accounting department redo it. The West Side Development property. Acquire it, no matter the cost. Notify the legal team. Prepare to sue Peterson Industries for patent infringement. It hit me like a ton of bricks. Well, I'll be damned. She's playing me. Hidden under that blanket was a laptop. She wasn't here to recover. She was using my farm as a remote office, a hideout. No wonder she was so quiet during the day. She was working all night and sleeping it off. A surge of anger washed over me. What did she think this was? A hotel she could check in and out of? A safe house to hide from her family's prying eyes? I was about to throw the door open and call her out, but I stopped myself. If I confronted her directly, she'd just find another way. And if the Van Cess got involved, my quiet life would be over. No, I had to be smarter. I had to make her want to leave. A wicked grin spread across my face. The next morning, I was up before the sun. I walked over to the main circuit breaker for the entire property. Checking my watch, I estimated that Isabella was probably in the middle of a video conference with her European division. I took a deep breath and, with a satisfying clunk, threw the main switch. The entire farm was instantly plunged into darkness and silence. A few seconds later, I heard a muffled gasp from Isabella's room, followed by the sound of something heavy hitting the floor. A wave of pure satisfaction washed over me. Let's see you run a multinational corporation now. If the slow internet doesn't kill you, the power outages will. I sauntered back to my room, crawled into bed, and went back to sleep. About 10 minutes later, a sharp knock came at my door. Liam. It was Isabella's voice, laced with a frustration she couldn't quite conceal. I faked a yawn and opened the door, pretending to be half asleep. What's up? It's the middle of the night. The power's out, she said, standing in the doorway. The moonlight made her face look pale. Oh, yeah, power's out, I said, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Happens all the time. Old wiring out here in the country. You get used to it. She didn't look convinced. Can't you fix it? Fix it. I threw my hands up dramatically. The nearest electrician lives in town. Nobody's coming out here in the dark. We just have to wait. If we're lucky, it'll be back on by morning. If not, maybe the day after. Isabella's lips pressed into a thin, hard line. I could just imagine the executives on the other side of the Atlantic staring at her blacked-out screen in confusion. Do you have a generator? She asked, a final sliver of hope in her voice. I pointed to the ancient diesel generator I used to aerate the fish pond. Sure do, but I used the last of the diesel yesterday. Forgot to buy more. Isabella fell completely silent. She stood there like an exquisite statue, but I could feel waves of fury radiating off her. Sweet victory, I thought. Take that, you corporate overlord. Welcome to life off the grid. I let out another big yawn and waved a dismissive hand. Well, might as well go back to sleep. Good for your health. All this clean, electricity-free air. Good night, Ms. Vance. And with a soft click, I shut the door in her face, leaving Isabella Vance alone in the silent moonlight to contemplate the utter helplessness of being unplugged. Chapter 4. The power outage therapy was clearly effective. All the next day, Isabella was distracted and on edge. She kept looking at me like she wanted to say something, probably asking when I was going to buy more diesel, but her pride wouldn't let her. Meanwhile, I played dumb. I wandered around the yard with a hoe, tapping things here and there, examining fence posts, doing everything but mentioning the power. You want to play games? I thought. On my turf, I got 100 ways to make your life difficult. That afternoon, Dr. Evans returned. When he saw Isabella's listless state, he wasn't concerned. He was ecstatic. Detachment. This is a classic symptom of detachment, he gushed to me. She's beginning to break her dependency on electronic devices. This is a crucial step toward recovery. Mr. Miller, you've done magnificently. Your power outage therapy is a stroke of genius. My eye twitched. I was just trying to mess with her. How did that become a therapy? Dr. Evans clapped me on the shoulder. We must press our advantage. He said earnestly, I suggest we now move to manual labor therapy. Have her participate directly in the farm work. The exhaustion of the body will purify the clutter of the mind. I looked at him, convinced he was the real patient. But his suggestion suited my purposes perfectly. After sending the doctor on his way, I found Isabella staring blankly at the koi pond. Ms. Vance, I began, clearing my throat with an air of clinical seriousness. To accelerate your recovery, I've decided it's time for you to formally participate in the farm's labor. Isabella looked up, her eyes filled with suspicion. Your task for this afternoon, I said, pointing to a patch of land in the distance, is to pull all the weeds from that field. It was a section I had deliberately left untended. The weeds were nearly as tall as I was. Isabella followed my finger, her gaze settling on the overgrown plot. She said nothing. I braced for her refusal, my "it's for your own good" speech already prepared. But then she stood up and smoothed down her clothes. Where are the gloves and tools? Once again, I was left speechless. This woman refused to follow any predictable script. I found her a pair of work gloves and a small hand hoe. She put them on, walked into the jungle of weeds that towered over her, and disappeared. I stood on the edge of the field, watching. All I could see were the tops of the weeds, shaking occasionally, the only sign that there was still a living person in there. This looks less like therapy and more like an episode of a survival show. I didn't bother her. I went back to the house, brewed a pot of tea, and started scrolling through TikTok. An hour passed, then two. The sun was beginning to set, and the movement in the weeds had all but stopped. A flicker of unease went through me. What if she had heat stroke and passed out in there? If anything happened to her, Old Man Vance would have my hide. I put my phone down and walked toward the field. Isabella? You still alive in there? I called out. No response. My heart tightened. I pushed through the tall weeds, calling her name. After a few steps, I found her. She was slumped on a small patch of ground she had managed to clear, covered in dirt and bits of leaves. Her hair was a mess, and there were smudges of dirt on her face. Her expensive sweatsuit was a total loss. She was panting heavily, her chest heaving. She looked utterly defeated, but around her was a small circle of cleared earth. When she saw me, she tried to struggle to her feet, but her legs gave out. I can't move, she said, her voice hoarse with exhaustion and tinged with an unfamiliar note of vulnerability. In that instant, my smug satisfaction vanished, replaced by a strange, unidentifiable feeling. Was it pity? Damn it. Why would I feel sorry for her? She's a billionaire capitalist, and I'm the proletariat. I shook my head, trying to banish the dangerous thought. I walked over and held out my hand. All right, Your Highness, that's enough for one day. Come on. She looked at my outstretched hand, hesitated for a second, then placed hers in it. I pulled, and she came up easily. She was surprisingly light, and when she stumbled against me, I could smell the scent of grass and soil in her hair. My heart, for no reason at all, skipped a beat. Just then, a commotion erupted from the direction of the village road. I looked up to see Mr. Hemlock and a few other villagers, mouths agape, staring at us. They were carrying a watermelon and some fresh vegetables, clearly on their way over for a friendly visit. So there we were. Me, the local farmer in shorts and flip-flops. Her, the gorgeous city girl covered in mud. And the two of us, tangled together in a very suggestive embrace in the middle of a weedy field. The watermelon in Mr. Hemlock's hands dropped to the ground with a wet splat. He pointed a trembling finger at us, his jaw hanging open. Liam, he stammered. You kids sure are getting wild in the weeds. My face instantly turned beet red. This was it, the absolute pinnacle of social suicide. Chapter 5. No, Mr. Hemlock, it's not what it looks like. I blurted out, hastily letting go of Isabella as I tried to salvage my reputation. Isabella, realizing the situation, also took 2 quick steps back, a faint blush coloring her cheeks as she tried to maintain a safe distance from me. But Mr. Hemlock just grinned, a knowing look in his eyes. No need to explain, son. We get it. Young folks full of fire. Nothing wrong with a little roll in the hay. Or the weeds. A woman next to him chimed in. That's right. Liam's new lady looks all prim and proper, but she's got a wild side. I wanted the earth to swallow me whole. My attempts to explain were like throwing gasoline on a bonfire. Isabella, who had likely never been the subject of this kind of small-town gossip in her life, was bright red. Yet, she still managed to muster her signature icy glare, sweeping it over the group of villagers. They flinched, but their love for a good story won out over their fear. Mr. Hemlock picked up the smashed watermelon and cheerfully offered me a large piece. Well, don't just stand there. You two must be tired after all that. Hard work. Have some watermelon. Cool yourselves down. He put a special emphasis on cool yourselves down. My mortification was complete. By tomorrow, the entire town would be convinced that Liam Miller and his city wife were getting it on in the vegetable patch. I numbly accepted the watermelon, glancing at Isabella. The look on her face, a perfect storm of wanting to commit murder and having to suppress it, was almost funny. Serve you right for using me, I thought, a small, vindictive part of me enjoying her discomfort. Now your reputation is as muddy as your pants. The gossip fest finally ended after I managed to usher the villagers away. When I got back to the yard, Isabella was gone, probably scrubbing off the day's grime and humiliation. I looked at the small patch of weeds she'd cleared, my feelings a complicated mix. That evening, I cooked a few extra dishes for dinner. We ate in a thick, awkward silence, neither of us daring to mention the afternoon's events. "Are we pulling more weeds tomorrow?" she asked suddenly. I looked at her. She was clean now, wearing a simple set of pajamas, but I could still see the exhaustion in her eyes. "No," I shook my head. "Tomorrow, you get an easier job." She just grunted in response and said nothing more. The next day, my idea of an easier job was having her sit by the pond and watch the fish, making sure the herons didn't get them. It wasn't long before she fell asleep, leaning against the trunk of a willow tree. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, dappling her face. Her long eyelashes rested on her cheeks, and without her usual cold, defensive mask, she looked like any other young woman who was simply tired. On an impulse I couldn't explain, I took off my jacket and gently draped it over her. Just as I did, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. I walked a short distance away before answering. "Hello. Is this Liam Miller?" A smug, arrogant voice asked from the other end. "This is Chadwick Peterson." Chadwick Peterson? It took me a second to place the name. The heir to Peterson Industries, one of Isabella's most persistent suitors and a major business rival of the Vance Corporation. "What do you want?" I asked, my tone instantly sour. "I'll get straight to the point," Chad said, his voice dripping with disdain. "I don't know what your deal is with Isabella, but I'll give you $10 million. Get out of her life and disappear." I almost laughed out loud. Seriously? Are we in a bad 90s movie? Who still pulls the "I'll pay you" to leave her card? 10 million. I drawled, dragging out the words. "Mr. Peterson, your information is a little out of date. Ms. Vance's severance package was 5 times that." There was a stunned silence on the other end. "Ew," he finally sputtered, his anger palpable. "Don't get cocky. You think Isabella actually sees something in a country bumpkin like you? She's just playing with you. Once she's bored, you'll be nothing. Not really your concern, is it?" I said lazily. "At least right now. She's playing with me, not you. If you're that bored, maybe you should see a doctor. I know a great one, Dr. Evans. He specializes in treating delusions of grandeur." "You're dead." I hung up before he could finish his threat. Trying to act tough with me? On my home turf? Not a chance. Feeling pleased with myself, I turned around and found Isabella wide awake, watching me. Her expression was complex. She looked like she wanted to ask something, but all she said was, "Thank you for the jacket." I shrugged. "Don't mention it. If you get it dirty, you owe me a new one." She ignored my joke. After a moment of silence, she asked, "Was that Chadwick?" I raised an eyebrow. Wow, news travels fast. "What, were you afraid I'd take his money and run?" She shook her head. "He's been making moves against my family's company. I'm worried he'll try to hurt you." I chuckled. "Don't worry. On my little patch of land, even dragons have to curl up and tigers have to lie down. If he dares to show his face here, I'll personally teach him that country roads can be slippery, but the people are even slipperier." Isabella looked at the confident smile on my face, and a strange light flickered in her eyes. It was something I had never seen there before. It looked a lot like trust. Chapter 6 that night, a torrential downpour began. Thunder rattled the windows, and lightning split the dark sky. I had just gotten into bed when I heard a loud pop, and the house was plunged into darkness. Great, I thought. Another power outage. This time it wasn't my doing. The storm had tripped the breaker for real. I fumbled for a candle and lit it, the flickering flame casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. Just as my eyes adjusted, I heard a tiny, suppressed sob from the next room. I froze. Was that Isabella? Crying? The Ice Queen, the woman who wouldn't flinch if the world was ending, was crying? I hesitated for a moment, then threw on a shirt, picked up the candle, and walked to her door. I knocked softly. "Isabella, are you okay?" The sobbing stopped, but there was no answer. I grew more concerned. "I'm coming in," I said, pushing the door open. The sight that met me was startling. Isabella was huddled in the corner of her bed, knees pulled to her chest, trembling slightly. In a wavering candlelight, I could see her face was pale and slick with a cold sweat. "What's wrong?" I asked, walking over and placing the candle on her nightstand. She looked up, her eyes red-rimmed, but her voice was stubborn. "I'm Fina." "Fina? You're shaking like a leaf. You got Parkinson's," I retorted, my concern making me blunt. She bit her lip and said nothing. Just then, another flash of lightning illuminated the room, followed by a deafening clap of thunder. Her body jolted violently, and she curled into an even tighter ball. It clicked. She was afraid of thunderstorms. The discovery was surreal. A titan of industry, a woman who commanded boardrooms and crushed competitors, was afraid of a little bad weather. I sighed and sat on the edge of her bed. When I was a kid, I was scared of thunder, too. I began, my voice soft. My mom used to tell me it was just the thunder gods bowling up in the sky. The louder the noise, the more rain we'd get, and the better the crops would grow. She didn't speak, but I felt the tension in her body ease slightly. Then I got older and learned it was just static discharge between clouds, and it seemed even less scary. I continued. You see, everything you're afraid of, once you understand what it really is, isn't so terrifying after all. Just like you, I added silently. All that armor on the outside, but underneath, you're just a girl who's scared of the dark. The room was quiet, filled only by the sound of the rain against the window and the low murmur of my voice. After a while, her trembling stopped. She leaned back against the headboard, her voice barely a whisper. Why? Why did you agree to the contract? It was the first time in 3 years she had ever asked me anything personal. I needed the money, I answered simply. My mom needed a new heart. The surgery was expensive. Do you hate me? She asked, her voice even quieter. For using you? For treating you like a means to an end? I stared at the flickering candle flame, considering it. Did I hate her? In the beginning, yes. There was a part of me that resented her. It felt profoundly unfair that she was born with everything, while I had to sell 3 years of my life just to keep my mother alive. But then I saw the other side of it. I saw her go days without sleep to close a deal. I saw her battling the old guard on her company's board, pushing through the pain of a stress-induced ulcer. And I saw her, more than once, standing alone in her high-rise office late at night, just staring out at the city lights, looking completely isolated. In those moments, I realized she was trapped, too. Trapped in a gilded cage called the Vance Heiress, with very little freedom of her own. No, I don't hate you, I said, shaking my head. It was a transaction. You got your freedom, and I saved my mom's life. It was a fair trade. She looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes begin to melt. Liam, she said, my name sounding fragile on her lips. I'm sorry. I was stunned. In all the time I'd known her, I'd never heard her say those words. And thank you. A slow smile spread across my face. Is that all? A thank you? That's not very sincere. She blinked. What do you want, then? I gestured toward the window. When the rain stops, you can finish weeding that field. She stared at me for a second, and then a small smile touched her lips. It grew into a genuine, beautiful grin. It was like the sun breaking through the storm clouds, and it lit up the entire room. And I had to admit, in that moment, my heart wasn't just skipping a beat. It was doing a full-on drum solo. Chapter 7. After the storm, the sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue. True to her word, Isabella went out to tackle the weeds. This time, she went on her own, without any prodding from me. I watched her from the porch, a tool in her hand, her back bent to the task. My feelings were complicated. Is it possible she's actually getting addicted to manual labor? Just then, my phone rang. It was Theodore Vance. Liam, my boy, how is Isabella doing? The old man's voice boomed through the phone. She's doing great, I reported honestly. Eating well, sleeping well. Today, she even volunteered for some labor therapy. There was a pause on the other end, followed by a deeply satisfied sigh. Excellent, excellent. I knew you were the right man for the job. It seems sending her to you was the best decision I ever made. I chuckled dryly. By the way, he added, his tone shifting, we were thinking of stopping by this afternoon to see her. A little surprise. My stomach clenched. A surprise? More like a shock. No, Mr. Vance, I wouldn't recommend that, I said quickly. Dr. Evans was very clear. No sudden shocks or stimuli. What if a surprise visit causes a relapse? You have a point. He conceded. All right, then. We won't come to the farm. We'll just park at the edge of town and take a look from a distance. How about that? He had me cornered. Refusing that would be too suspicious. All right, I sighed. That should be fine. As soon as I hung up, I ran out to the field. Your grandfather and his entourage are coming for an inspection this afternoon, I told her. Isabella stopped weeding and frowned. What do they want now? They want to see how your recovery is coming along, I said, throwing my hands up, which means we have to put on a little show. She gave me a puzzled look. I leaned in close and quickly laid out my plan. As she listened, a bizarre expression crossed her face, part amusement, part disgust. Do we really have to do that? Absolutely, I said firmly, for your freedom and for my peace and quiet. That afternoon, the Vance convoy appeared on the horizon, just as expected. I was in the yard, gently supporting a frail Isabella as we took a leisurely stroll. We had both changed into simple, rustic-looking clothes. I'd even smeared a bit of dirt on my cheek for added effect. We looked like a simple, hard-working farm couple. Honey, are you getting tired? Should we rest for a bit? I asked in a saccharine tone that made my own skin crawl. Isabella played her part perfectly, leaning against me weakly. I'm not tired, darling. As long as I'm with you, I could do anything. I had to physically suppress the urge to gag. From the road, the window of a Rolls-Royce slid down. Theodore Vance and Dr. Evans were peering at us through a pair of high-power binoculars. Intimacy, natural affection. What a harmonious scene. Dr. Evans declared, his face flushed with excitement. Ms. Vance's gaze is filled with such dependency and love. Her recovery is nothing short of miraculous. Theodore was practically weeping. Wonderful, just wonderful. I knew only Liam could cure her. Seeing their reaction, I decided to lay it on even thicker. I turned to Isabella. Sweetheart, what would you like for lunch? I'll make you anything you want. Isabella, getting into the role, put on a doe-eyed expression. I'd love your barbecue ribs. And I want to try making you some scrambled eggs myself. I feigned being overcome with emotion. Oh, darling, you'd do that for me? I'm the luckiest man alive. We then walked, hand in hand, into the kitchen. What followed was a culinary disaster. Isabella didn't even know how to crack an egg without getting shells in it. She turned the kitchen into a war zone. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore and banished her from the room while I cooked a full meal. By the time we had finished our romantic lunch, the Vance convoy had discreetly departed. I collapsed into a chair, more exhausted than if I'd plowed 10 acres. Isabella looked equally drained. You think? They bought it? She asked. Bought it? I'm pretty sure they're halfway back to New York, crying tears of joy, I said wearily. She let out a sigh of relief. Then, her eyes fell on the table of food. You know, she said quietly, you cook better than our 5-star family chef. I felt a small spark of pride. That's because it's home cooking. She picked up her fork and took another bite of the ribs, eating slowly. When she was done, she looked at me, her expression completely serious. Liam, when my illness is cured, I'm hiring you as my personal chef. Name your price. I roll my eyes. Get lost. These hands cook for my future wife, and that's a price no amount of money can buy. The words were out before I could stop them, and I instantly regretted them, because I saw Isabella's face turn a lovely shade of pink. Chapter 8. After the success of our little play, the atmosphere between Isabella and me shifted into something new. The icy wall was gone, replaced by an easy rapport. She even cracked a joke or two. I, in turn, got used to having her around. To further her immersion therapy, I decided to take her to the weekend farmer's market in town. It was the kind of chaotic, vibrant place I'd grown up with, full of life and local color. Isabella, clearly a fish out of water, looked at everything with wide-eyed curiosity. I bought her a simple white t-shirt and jeans from a local store. With her hair in a ponytail and no makeup, she looked less like a CEO and more like a college student. What's that? She asked, pointing at a booth selling cotton candy. That's the stuff cavities are made of. Ever had it? She shook her head. One pink, please, I said, handing the vendor a few dollars. She took the fluffy pink cloud on a paper cone, her eyes sparkling like a kid on Christmas morning. She took a delicate lick, and her eyes crinkled in a sweet, satisfied smile. I couldn't help but grin. The joy of a billionaire CEO, it turns out, can be bought for $5. We wandered through the stalls, her buying a small, hand-woven wind chime, and me buying a warm bag of freshly roasted almonds. We were sharing the bag when a jarring voice cut through the cheerful noise. Isabella? Is that really you? I turned to see Chadwick Peterson. He was dressed in a painfully flashy pink suit, his hair slicked back with a gallon of gel. Flanked by 2 bodyguards, he stuck out like a sore thumb. His eyes lit up when he saw Isabella, but his expression soured when he noticed me and the bag of almonds we were sharing. Isabella, what are you doing in a place like this? With him, eating this peasant food? Isabella's face instantly turned to ice. Who I'm with and what I eat is none of your business, Chadwick. How is it none of my business? Chad stepped forward, agitated. Do you have any idea what's happened while you've been missing? The board is in chaos. Those old vultures are about to install my father as chairman. And you're here, wasting your time at a flea market? Isabella's brow furrowed. I stepped in front of her. Chadwick, I said with a tight smile, I think you're mistaken. Ms. Vance isn't missing. She's here with me. For treatment. Treatment? He scoffed as if I'd told the world's funniest joke. What's wrong with her? If anyone's sick, it's you. What kind of spell have you put on her? He lunged forward, trying to grab Isabella's arm. I blocked him, my hand clamping down on his wrist. Years of farm work had given me a grip of steel. It was certainly no match for a spoiled brat who had never done a day of hard labor in his life. Ow! Let go of me. You're breaking my arm, he yelped. A crowd of onlookers immediately gathered, pointing and whispering. Hey, isn't that the no-good Peterson kid? Sure is. Causing trouble again, I see. And that's Leah Miller with him. Wow, his new girlfriend is gorgeous. I listened to the local gossip, a grin spreading across my face. I released his wrist. Mr. Peterson, I said, my voice dripping with innocence, let's use our words. Getting physical is so unseemly. And look, you're drawing a crowd. Chad's face turned a shade of purple, but seeing all the phones pointed at him, he choked back his anger. You just wait, he snarled, before beating a hasty retreat with his bodyguards in tow. The drama was over as quickly as it had begun. Isabella looked at me, her expression unreadable. Aren't you afraid of making an enemy of him? Sure, I am, I said, popping an almond into my mouth. That's why I made him leave before he had the chance to really make an enemy of me. She laughed at my twisted logic, a real, genuine laugh. Liam, she said, her tone serious now, thank you. For today. Again with the thank yous? I roll my eyes. Words are cheap. How about some action? And what? Do you have in mind? I pointed to a nearby carnival game. See that giant stuffed bear? Win it for me. She looked at the bear, which was at least 3 feet tall, then at the flimsy plastic rings in the vendor's hand, and fell silent. In the end, we spent $20 and walked away with a tiny palm-sized rubber duck. Seeing the look of utter defeat on her face, I laughed so hard my stomach hurt. Chapter 9. Chadwick Peterson's appearance was like a stone thrown into our quiet pond, and the ripples were spreading. Isabella grew pensive. I caught her several times trying to sneak away with her laptop, but I always managed to interrupt. Isabella, the chicken's laid an egg. You have to see it. Isabella, the first watermelon is ripe. Come on. Isabella, look. Is that a pig flying? She grew exasperated with my constant interruptions, eventually just glaring at me before giving up on her work. I knew she was worried about her company. Chadwick's father had always been a powerful and ambitious member of the board, and Isabella's sabbatical was the perfect opportunity for him to make a move. But I also knew that if she went back now, she would revert to being that overworked, stressed-out ice queen. I wasn't going to let that happen. A few days later, Chad made his next move. It was more insidious than a direct confrontation. Mr. Hemlock came running to my farm, his face pale with panic. Liam, it's terrible. The distributors in town, they're refusing to buy our produce. My heart sank. What? They said someone powerful warned them off, he said, smacking his thigh in frustration. Said that anyone who buys from our village will be run out of business. This is our livelihood, son. The whole village depends on this. It had to be Chad. That slimy coward, I thought. He can't get to me, so he goes after my neighbors. Isabella, who had overheard, looked stricken. I'm so sorry, she said quietly. This is my fault. It's not your fault, I said, putting a hand on her shoulder. He's coming after me. I looked at the piles of fresh vegetables and fruit in my barn, and an idea began to form. Mr. Hemlock, go back and tell everyone not to panic. Have them bring all their unsold produce to my farm. He looked at me, confused, but nodded and left. Isabella turned to me. What are you going to do? All of this will spoil in a couple of days. I gave her a mysterious smile. Just watch. The next day, a massive banner was hanging over the entrance to the whatever farm. It read, "Celebrating the boss lady's recovery. All fruits and veggies free for 3 days." Then, I borrowed Isabella's phone and logged into her Instagram account, which had millions of followers. I chose the picture I'd taken of her by the pig pen, a few of her at the market eating cotton candy, and another of her looking frustrated at the ring toss game. I wrote a short caption. Tired of the city noise, I went searching for silence and found so much more. Feeling peaceful, happy, and grateful for the one by my side. P.S. Our farm's produce is the sweetest you'll ever taste. Come try some for yourself, it's on us. Address in bio. I showed the post to Isabella. She read it, and her face turned the color of a ripe tomato. You can't post that. Why not? I said, all bravado. It's part of your treatment. It's proof. We're showing the world how happy and healthy you are here. Before she could argue further, her phone started buzzing uncontrollably. Likes, comments, and shares were flooding in. The post exploded. Hashtag CO goes farming, hashtag billionaire in the boondocks, hashtag Vance Farms. The hashtag started trending almost immediately. Isabella was speechless. The effect was instantaneous. Within an hour, a traffic jam of cars clogged the road to my farm. There were influencers in sports cars, news vans with satellite dishes, and hundreds of curious locals. They swarmed the farm like locusts, and in a few hours, every last piece of produce was gone. The villagers stood by their empty trucks, clutching the thick wads of cash I'd given them as subsidies, their faces beaming. Mr. Hemlock threw his arms around me, tears in his eyes. "Liam, you're a miracle worker. You saved us." I surveyed the chaotic, happy scene, then glanced at Isabella, who was still staring at her phone in disbelief. I grinned. Chadwick Peterson wanted to use money to choke us out. I decided to use the one thing he valued even more, public opinion, to teach him a lesson. Just then, a commotion rippled through the crowd. Chadwick himself, his face a mask of fury, pushed his way through. He glared at Isabella and me, trembling with rage. "Isabella, how could you? Humiliating yourself with this. This farmer for a publicity stunt. You've disgraced the Vance name." I pulled him aside. "Listen, Chad," I said in a low voice, "times have changed. The story people love right now is billionaire bad boy tries to steal my girl, but she chooses the humble farm boy instead. If you make a scene, you'll just make our story go even more viral. And you'll be cast as the villain, hated by millions. You really want that?" The color drained from his face, shifting from red to white to a pasty gray. He looked at the sea of smartphones pointed directly at him, and his nerve broke. "This isn't over," he hissed, before once again making a swift, humiliating exit. I watched him go, feeling nothing. I turned back to find Isabella looking at me with an expression of pure, shining admiration. "Liam," she said, her voice full of wonder, "is there anything you can't do?" I gave her a cocky wink. "All in a day's work. Basic stuff." She laughed, a bright, carefree sound. "I've made a decision," she said, her eyes locking onto mine. "I'm not leaving." I blinked. "What?" I said. "I'm not leaving," she repeated, her voice firm. "I'm investing in this farm. From now on, I'm not just the boss lady. I'm the boss." Chapter 10. Isabella wasn't kidding about investing. The next morning, I got a text from my bank. My account balance had suddenly grown by a string of zeros, so long I lost count. I found her in the yard, wearing an apron, clumsily trying to scatter feed for the chickens. "What is this?" I asked, holding up my phone. "My farm isn't worth this much." She set down the feed bucket and dusted off her hands. "That's not the price of the farm," she said, her gaze steady and serious. "That's the price for the rest of your life." I was speechless. "I did some digging," she continued, her tone shifting to business. "Chadwick and his father have been secretly buying up Vance Corp stock. They're planning a hostile takeover at the next shareholders meeting, using my absence as leverage to force my father out. I can't go back now. It would be walking straight into their trap. So, I'm staying here," she declared. "This farm is my safe house, and my new headquarters. And you, Liam, are my partner." I looked at her, and it all finally clicked. She wasn't playing farmer. She was preparing for war. "Why me?" I asked, The question that had been nagging at me for weeks. Of all the places you could go, why here? She was silent for a long moment. Do you remember that gala we went to, right after we got married? She asked softly. I racked my brain. The memory was faint. Some drunk trust fund kid had gotten handsy with her, refusing to leave her alone. As her husband, I'd had to step in. I think I tripped him, I said. He fell flat on his face. You did more than that, she said, a ghost of a smile playing on her lips. You dragged him into an alley. I don't know what you said to him, but he avoided me like the plague after that. And a month later, his family's company mysteriously went bankrupt. I rubbed the back of my neck. I might have been a bit more persuasive than I let on. From that day on, I knew you were different from all the other men who orbited my life, sniffing around for money or power, she said, her eyes holding an emotion I couldn't quite decipher. In 3 years, you took the money you were owed and never asked for a single thing more. You were the only person in my world who didn't want something from me. So when I felt the walls closing in, this was the first place I thought of. She looked at me, her voice dropping to a near whisper. Here, Liam, I feel safe. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I was her safe place. All right, I sighed, putting my phone away. Since the new boss has spoken, I guess this humble employee has to pledge his loyalty. What do you need me to do? She smiled, and in that smile, the confident, brilliant CEO returned. I need you to keep being my cure, she said. I need everyone to believe that I've thrown away my empire for you. I need them to drop their guard completely. I understood. She was on a feigned retreat while planning a counteroffensive. No problem, I said with a snap of my fingers. When it comes to acting, I'm a professional. And so, in the days that followed, the fairy tale romance of Liam and Isabella became a viral sensation. We posted pictures of us planting vegetables, fishing in a pond, and stargazing. I taught her the difference between corn and wheat. She taught me about market futures. Our story was shared by countless blogs, becoming the feel-good romance of the year. Meanwhile, in my unassuming barn, a bank of high-end computers hummed 24/7. From this rustic command center, Isabella Vance remotely orchestrated a devastating counterattack against Peterson Industries. And I became her chief of staff, head of logistics, and her most trusted advisor. All that business and computer science I'd studied in college was finally being put to good use. We discovered we had an uncanny synergy. With a single glance, I knew her next move. With a single suggestion, she could grasp the key to a complex problem. We were like two perfectly matched gears, and once we started turning, we were an unstoppable force. Chapter 11. The day before the shareholders' meeting, the air was thick with tension. The Petersons, father and son, had secured the backing of most of the board. They were ready to make their move, citing Isabella Vance's mental instability and inability to lead as grounds for a complete takeover. They were confident, believing Isabella was still blissfully unaware, playing house on my farm. That night, Isabella stared at the streams of data on her monitors, her face grim. They have their smoking gun, she said, her voice strained. A forged medical report diagnosing me with a severe psychological disorder. The signature on it is Dr. Evans's. My jaw tightened. They bought him. Looks like it, Isabella said, rubbing her temples wearily. With that report, my credibility with the board will be destroyed. I was silent for a moment, then I picked up my phone and dialed Dr. Evans. He answered on the second ring. Mr. Miller? His voice was shaky. Dr. Evans. Long time no see. I said cheerfully. I hear you've come into some money recently. The line went dead silent. I'm not one for beating around the bush, I continued. I know what you did. I'm going to give you 2 choices. 1. Tomorrow, you make yourself scarce, and I'll pretend this never happened. 2. I take the proof of your bribery, along with all the dirt I have on your academic fraud and history of harassing interns, and I make you the top trending topic on Twitter. The choice is yours. I'd had a bad feeling about Dr. Evans from the start, so I'd had a friend do some digging. Turned out my hunch was right. I could hear his ragged breathing on the other end of the line. I'll choose option 1, he stammered. I hung up and gave Isabella a thumbs up. She stared at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and, was that all? How did you? Sun Tzu, know your enemy and know yourself, and you will not be imperiled in 100 battles. I quoted smugly. I just did a little homework. She looked at me and suddenly broke into a smile. Leah Miller, how many more surprises do you have up your sleeve? Depends on how many you want to find out, I said, leaning closer, my voice dropping. For example, did you know that I never finished my sentence. She closed the small distance between us and pressed her lips against mine. It was a soft, gentle kiss that tasted of mint and smelled faintly of the fresh country air. My entire body froze. Did she just kiss me? She pulled back, her face flushed but her eyes resolute. That, she whispered, is the down payment. After we win this war, I'll pay you back with the rest of my life. And in that moment, my heart, which had been stumbling and skipping for weeks, finally, completely surrendered. Chapter 12, the Vance Corporation's shareholder meeting was a tinderbox. Chadwick's father, Harrison Peterson, sat at the head of the table, looking smug and triumphant. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, as we all know, my dear niece Isabella has been unwell. Her mental state is a cause for great concern. For the future of this company, I propose that I step in as interim chairman. Just as he finished, the double doors to the boardroom swung open. Isabella and I walked in side by side. She was wearing a sharp, black power suit, her hair down, her eyes clear and focused. She radiated confidence and authority. There was not a trace of the patient she had been pretending to be. The entire room gasped. Harrison Peterson's face went white. Isabella, what are you doing here? Why shouldn't I be here? She replied, walking calmly to the head of the table. I take one vacation, Uncle Harrison, and you're already trying to stage a coup? But you're sick, Chadwick stammered. Am I? Isabella smiled, a dangerous, razor-sharp smile. And what's your proof? That fraudulent medical report you paid Dr. Evans $5 million to forge. She tossed a small audio recorder onto the table. My voice and Dr. Evans's panic confession filled the silent room. Harrison's face turned ashen. But that's not all, Isabella said, clicking a button. The large screen behind her lit up, displaying a series of documents. It was a mountain of evidence detailing years of embezzlement, insider trading, and corporate espionage committed by the Petersons. Each document was another nail in their coffin. You. Harrison pointed a trembling finger at her, speechless. Uncle Harrison, out of respect for your years of service, I'll give you one chance. Isabella's voice was like ice. Take your son and get out of my building. Now. Otherwise, your next meeting will be with a federal prosecutor. Staring at the undeniable proof and the looks of disgust from the other board members, Harrison knew it was over. He and Chadwick were escorted out by security like common criminals. The boardroom erupted in thunderous applause. Isabella stood at the head of the table, accepting the congratulations, once again the undisputed queen of her empire. But through it all, her eyes kept finding mine. Later that day, we were back at the farm. The setting sun cast a warm, golden glow over everything. It's over, she said softly, standing beside me. Yeah, I nodded. It's over. So, I said, turning to her with a grin, when are you going to make good on your promise? A blush crept up her neck. What promise? The one about paying me back with the rest of your life, I said, leaning in. I mirrored her actions from the night before, giving her a quick, soft kiss. It's time for me to collect the interest. She didn't pull away. Instead, she wrapped her arms around my neck and deepened the kiss. When we finally broke apart, she rested her head on my chest. Liam, she whispered, let's get married again. I smiled. I'm on board with that. But this time, I don't want your money. Then what do you want? I held her close, looking out at the small piece of paradise we had built together, breathing in the scent of soil and wildflowers, feeling the warmth of her in my arms. I want you, I said, and a lifetime supply of your scrambled eggs.